going to I'm going to introduce, we have two speakers, one who will be joining us in a little bit. For those who don't know me, though, my name is Elise Mendel, and I am the Director of Career Services for Baruch College's Weissman School of Arts and Sciences graduate programs. There's a long title for you. And today I'm very happy and pleased actually to have Mercer Sirota do this information session. And our main presenter here is Michael McGuire, and he is a senior talent strategy consultant at Mercer Sirota. And he'll be joined shortly by a colleague, Peter Victigliano, who is the principal and team leader at Mercer Sirota. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you now and take it away. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Elise. First, let me say it's a pleasure to be here. I know the times are tough, and we were kind of really looking forward to joining the career fair when it was supposed to happen last month. So we're pretty excited to actually have the opportunity to reach out and talk with everybody today. So let's just get right into the deck. I know we only have a certain amount of time. So we are Mercer Sirota. I am Michael McGuire. I'm a senior talent strategy consultant, as Elise said. I'm going to give you a little background of myself and my career story, and then we're going to head into talking about Mercer Sirota itself. And then I'll show you some of the products and services that we're offering now, just to give you a little background about what we're up to at Mercer Sirota. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the deck. So my career story, and this could be similar to other people. My career story was not as linear as some other people's careers have gone. Usually, people come from straight college to master's to PhD level. Mine took a couple twists and turns. I started off here in New York City at the College of Staten Island, and then I moved over to Baruch College for my master's in industrial organizational psychology. So a little shout out to Baruch. Always, always happy to say that I'm an alumni from Baruch College. And from Baruch College, I moved over to Hofstra's Applied Organizational Psychology PhD program, where I'm still continuing my work right now. I'm writing my dissertation at the moment, hopefully trying to graduate at the end of this year. But from a career perspective, before I was in IO psychology or started my career in IO psychology, I actually worked in the wine and liquor industry throughout my undergraduate years and most of my master's student years at Baruch College. And during that time, I really kind of grew my passion and knowledge around IO psychology enough where when I was in the Baruch Master's program that I made the decision, well, you know what? Let me study for my PhD as well. It was a challenging decision to make, as I'm sure that anyone's decision to really attend graduate school was. But as I got to do more and more work within the wine and liquor company in marketing terms, I really felt that there was an opportunity for me to kind of lend expertise from an employee perspective, which really led me to IO psychology itself. So one of the things that I want to stress for people in their younger careers is that you might not really find what you want to do in the beginning, and it's really an opportunity for you when you're younger is to try and see what's out there within the market, make sure that you're understanding, what you're getting into with IO psychology, make sure you do your homework about, where you see yourself in your career going, because it's not exactly that linear process that I had mentioned earlier. You could jump around, you can do a lot of different things that might lead you to IO psychology itself. And the best part about that is you can combine a lot of the skills and talents that you've really cultivated in other positions and transfer them over to IO psychology, because IO psychology itself encompasses a lot of different types of careers within itself. For me, working in the wine and liquor industry, working within marketing, merchandising, things like that, I gained a lot of experience from a sales perspective. I really kind of grew my talents from, a communication aspect, really learning and sharpening my tools when it came to things like sales, you know, and just kind of putting my story out there and making sure that people understand the products that I really was trying to sell them. So that was an easy kind of transfer over into the consulting side of things. So my little background here, other than the fact that your career could kind of jump around in a bunch of different places, and as I continue on in the deck, right, what most people want is that climb up the ladder itself, very linear. I really want to try to get to where I want to go, but what really happens is that, you know, you're doing kind of a balancing act between your work, your personal life, trying to figure out what interests that you have. It really comes down to, you know, you're going to fail at certain points. You're going to go down roads where you finally kind of realize that maybe I'm not too interested in this. But, you know, when it comes to actually generating a successful career, you'll go through all of those pitfalls. And in the end, if you have the passion for it, and you work and you strive towards what you really want, hopefully you'll be standing on top of that ladder all the way to the right by the end of it. But yeah, so even with myself getting to a point where I'm working for Mercer Sirota, it's really been you know, helpful for my career to have a lot of different perspectives. And I think one of the things that's really kind of a strength of IO psychology is all of these types of different networking and kind of career opportunities and career fairs and things like that. The community here in New York City, at least, does a great job of really kind of doing outreach to students to help them understand, you know, what's possible in IO psychology. What are people up to? You know, what are the companies that are around that you can work for? So yeah, one of my other suggestions for everyone from a career perspective is really to kind of try to put yourself out there and talk to as many people within the IO psychology career track, and really get a sense of what you want out of your career as an IO psychologist or IO practitioner, right? So one of the things that really helped me was just to network and talk with people and just to really understand where I wanted to go once I decided that IO psychology was the career for me. So just a little bit of a suggestion for everyone. But let's get into what we do at Mercer Sirota itself. I know we only have a limited amount of time before we get into the questions itself. So let's talk about 3 quick things about Mercer Sirota. So we really are an experienced employee research firm. We collect about 1.5 million to 2 million employee survey responses per year with mainly our engagement survey products. We've had over 45 plus years of partnering with clients. So we've really worked on creating really sustainable and productive relationships with clients. And now that 1.5 to 2 million employees surveyed per year is really a reflection of our global presence across the world. So we have a presence in over 130 countries, across 80 different languages. We have multiple local consultants around the globe to help our clients with their survey needs, and to help with their other employee research initiatives within their organizations. So to really sum up this slide is that we really have a very solid knowledge base about surveying itself. We have a global presence, which really kind of helps us understand the employee side of things from multiple perspectives, which really makes us kind of a powerful player within the employee research and surveying market. So I think that's a pretty good segue into, all right, so how did Mercer and Sirota kind of get together? So Sirota was the original company, started with David Sirota, who's still around and is still doing work himself. He's wrote a fantastic book, The Employee Experience, The Enthusiastic Employee. I was actually just on a call with him right before we started this. But he was the founder of Sirota and was really kind of one of the fathers of the modern employee engagement survey movement. A few years back, we combined with Mercer. Mercer actually purchased us to form Mercer Sirota. And within Mercer Sirota, that really just kind of gave us more tools to kind of work with when we're talking about the total employee experience. So we're not just focusing on employee engagement anymore. We're looking across the total employee experience. We're including other things like onboarding surveys, exit surveys, focus groups, I myself personally work with a lot of 360-degree feedback programs. I work with mergers and acquisitions programs. So from an actual assessment standpoint, we do offer, a range of different employee research tools to help organizations understand their employees. If we kind of look across from the assess bucket on the bottom there to understanding, we have to have the analytics and reporting that goes into, the final deliverables that go out to what the client sees. So we have our hands not only in our normal executive analysis, we also have reporting tools that we use. And I'll give you guys a little bit of a look at one of our up and coming reporting tools that we'll be using moving forward at Mercer Sirota a little bit later in the deck. But yeah. What you need to do is you really need to help your clients understand the data that you're collecting from their employees and then do the analysis on that. This is where we really kind of shine, I think, compared to other competitors within the market space. I'm not trying to sound too salesy. I'm just really proud of kind of the culture that we've created at Mercer Sirota. And that's really driven by, the consultants that work with us. There are a lot of tools out there that you can use to collect employee responses from your employees. However, our consultants are really some top-notch consultants in the IO business, and I'm really proud of the work that we're doing to kind of develop and really help organizations understand their data. So that's what I would kind of call the core of Mercer Sirota itself, is that we are basically a consulting-driven or consultant-driven organization where we really try to set up meaningful partnerships with our clients and help them understand their data from a number of different perspectives, which includes all of the reporting tools and different analyses that we run for them. And then finally on the right there is that ACT, action, practices, and tools. Once we've actually done the analysis, we help the clients really start to kind of understand their data, understand their reports, make sure that the managers within the organizations themselves are familiar with the data, can really interpret it in an effective and productive way, and from there really start to action plan on what's happening. So this in a nutshell is pretty much what we do with Mercer Sirota. I'll get a little bit more specific in some of the later slides, but this is a pretty good snapshot of who we are and where we've come from and what we do now. One of the big things that we are known about, and this was not on the slide before that, is our Mercer Sirota normative database. Now, this is really something that people come to us and say, all right, we need help not only understanding our employees from an internal perspective, but we also want to understand how we're performing against other organizations, or are we similar to them? How do we differ from them? So within our employee database, our normative database, right now, using a 5-year rolling database, we have 8.1 million employee responses. So it's a very robust database collected from across many different countries, not just the United States here or the North American continent. We update it annually. So we basically are recalculating those norms every year. We're looking for trends across those norms to help clients really understand their data in comparison to their own. So we have a number of different offerings when it comes to benchmarks. It's not just by country, like I said before. We drill down to other things such as job functions, management levels, important demographics like tenure, generation, age. All of this is just more tools to help companies really kind of understand what's happening within their population and to give them a perspective of the differences across those type of demographic groups. So this is something that we're also really proud of at Mercer Sirota. And if Pete, my supervisor and colleague, Pete Retigliano, who's on the line right now, he'd probably say yes, because he is our norms guru and he's really proud of the work that we've done to kind of generate this type of data for our clients. And it's pretty exciting too, just to see the differences year over year and the differences across many of these different demographic levels. So from an IO psychologist perspective, whenever you give me data, I'm always looking for differences across groups. I'm really trying to kind of do comparisons. I'm really trying to understand how people really kind of perform based upon things like geography, time, things like that, demographics, whatnot. So I'm excited to have this type of normative database behind the work that I do with my clients. Let's get into what I do as a consultant specifically. So the consulting support that Mercer Sirota offers they really falls into a few different buckets. These are some of the more overarching buckets within the consulting aspect of working at Mercer Sirota. So really, from a key project support area, and I'm going to go into this a little bit deeper, really helping companies set up their questionnaires, do question writing, supporting them with data interpretation, things like that. We've developed a best practice database where we help managers kind of understand lower scores on items and how they can kind of action on that. We obviously do the data analysis, we give executive presentations, we talk with clients, and we do some action recommendations based upon the data that we see. Furthermore, that action facilitation, the training, what happens after the fact of the survey, right? Let's make sure everybody understands their data. Let's make sure they're trained to use their data in a constructive way and have great conversations with their employees or direct reports. And then some other interventions and analytic techniques. And for example, here I just kind of included a couple down at the bottom. You know, we generate such a large amount of data. You know, we want to do linkage analysis. Is the employee engagement data itself you know, linked to other outcomes within the organization as well. So we really want to try to use our employee engagement to help our clients understand their data from a holistic perspective, right? Where does this fall in? And really kind of help them, try to action and really plan for the future in these cases. But let's talk about that key project support just a little bit more. So that ongoing questionnaire design, whenever a client comes to us, whether they be new, whether they be somebody that's continuing with us, they always have the question about, all right, what should we be asking? If they're new clients, we can present them with items based on our normative database and really kind of assist them in how to design a questionnaire. This will basically vary by what type of organization they are. It usually depends upon, you know, what industry they fall in. There are some items that are really more relevant to some other types of industries than others. You know, obviously our main core engagement items are something that's really standard across most surveys, but when we talk to organizations, we found that, you know, some organizations within certain industries are just more interested in asking about certain things other than others. And we try to help them craft a survey that's really going to kind of generate data that they can find useful and action upon in the future. In line with that questionnaire design, we have that survey strategy, when to conduct surveys, what's the cadence of surveying, and then the methodology behind our consulting approach too, right? So we're talking with the client, and it's not just an engagement survey that they may want to kind of engage with us about, but there's other parts of the organization when they're interested in doing talent development. That's where 360-degree feedback tools can come in. Mergers and acquisitions, if we're working with other larger companies that are acquiring a lot of companies, we can design surveys based around that. So really the methodology that we set up with the client is really based upon the client's needs. So we don't have one overarching methodology. We really try to tailor it to the client that we're working with. Now, all of this is also kind of falls into that survey communication support too. One of the big things that we're finding out right now with what's happening in the world with COVID is that communication is very important when we're talking about you know, surveying with clients themselves. What are we going to do? What is the organization going to do with the data? You know, we want to know what's happening. We just spent the time to really kind of answer these questions for you. What's going to happen? And it's not just really what's going to happen after the fact and how we're going to kind of action upon those results. Even prior to the survey coming out, you really want to give your employees an accurate kind of communication plan of what's happening, what's coming up, what to expect, things like that. So it's really not a surprise when a survey kind of shows up in your email box. it's really important from a consultant perspective, just from a communication aspect, to really make sure that not only your organization knows about, how you're communicating results back to them, but how that communication really kind of spills down to the employees itself. And then finally, that data utilization support. So our recommendations and our advice, really how to kind of interpret the employee survey data. Once again, that's something that really cuts across most of the surveys. But however, employee data for each organization will differ, right? The scores that we see on certain engagement surveys will be different for other companies, and how we kind of interpret that data and help them identify where the strengths that lie within an organization are, where opportunities lie, that'll differ based upon the client itself. So a lot of what we do as IO psychology practitioners for Mercer Sirota is really tailored to the experience that kind of comes with the client itself. And as an IO psychologist, I really kind of love that aspect of working with Mercer Sirota itself. The best way to really collect data and understand people is to get basically multiple methods of collecting data and really kind of understanding it from a lot of different aspects. To me, there's that reflects in the way that we really kind of approach our clients as well. There's multiple ways to really kind of help a client understand their data. And that is not just a typical surveying cadence or something like that, but also those other tools and instruments that we use, such as 360 feedbacks, onboarding and exit surveys and things like that. So it really is kind of a tailored experience from the Mercer Sirota perspective. So let's talk about employee listening. And whenever we talk about employee listening, there should be a purpose behind the employee listening itself. So let me talk about some of our main, ideologies within Mercer Sirota. Throughout all of the research that we've done over the years, we found that things are shifting from an employee experience perspective. In the beginning, there was more of a loyalty contract with employees where the basic needs were pay, benefits, security. And if we look towards today, we see more psychological needs such as achievement, camaraderie, equity, things like that. However, what's the future going to hold? And I think this is really kind of being reflected also in the COVID response to things at the present moment too, right? We're thinking about holistic needs. We're thinking about purpose. We're thinking about meaning. We're thinking about thriving and impact. We're thinking about things that are much more individualistic. And one of the things that we're also seeing within the COVID response too is that, yes, people want more communication from their organizations. They're really setting up stronger relationships with their organizations at this time, which means that they really are craving more information about how to thrive as an employee within an organization. So where we are now is somewhere between that engagement contract and that experience contract. And as we kind of move on from the engagement contract to the experience contract, I think that's really going to be heavily influenced by, what's the next chapter in this coronavirus response, unfortunately, because the world of work is fundamentally changing at the moment. And we really need to understand from an employee perspective what employees want out of their organizations. So rethinking the employee experience. Now, we see these three buckets here: the environment, the events, the employee. The events obviously being what's happening around the employee's journey through their experience with an organization, but also the environment that the organization lies in. Those two buckets right now are really being affected a lot by what's happening within the unstable work environment. But where the employee kind of fits in with that. So in this Venn diagram here, we're really looking at that center part. Where does everything kind of cut across and what's important from an employee experience perspective? Because all of these other variables are really influencing how the employee feels within their experience within the organization. So that's what we're really trying to tap when we're kind of creating these surveys for clients. The types of experience that people are craving: the enriching, the efficient, the embracing, the empathetic. All of these are short little examples of, what people really want and where, we can see organizations that are going to be serving in the future, what they're going to be focusing on, right? So a lot around support of employees. Coronavirus response example would be safety, all right? Helping them get set up with remote working, things about that. How do we make work more efficient for people in times of crises like these? And how is that going to change moving forward? Is the work experience or the employee experience still enriching to them, even though things have changed a little bit? So we have to think about all of these buckets when we're kind of creating our surveys and helping organizations understand their employee population. And then when you put it all together, we have this nice little timeline here where we start off by clarifying research objectives. Okay, what exactly do we want to know from our employees? And then moving to that, identifying areas of assessment. Here might be, especially with the current climate, you might want to focus on things more like communication, more like safety, as opposed to some other more general kind of organizational development concepts. So it's really, when you're clarifying your research objectives, you want to make sure that you're assessing the right things and not really seeming like too tone deaf with your employees as you move into the research method parts of it, right? And then further on down the line here, you really want to determine the cadence and the composition of what you're doing with your survey projects. And then finally, you want to prepare for reporting, analytics, and action. So it really is a step-by-step process where you need to understand what you want to survey. You need to select the right methods for surveying your employees and gathering data. And then from there, when do we do it? How often do we do it? And how are we going to report that data out to clients? So basically on the bottom here, it's a short summary of that. Create a targeted and direct employee research program, and then put the survey system to work in a constructive way where not only employees get the most out of it, but also managers, things like that, can be trained up and really understand their data and understand where employees feel that their organizations really have opportunities for improvement. So finally here, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek of a reporting tool that we're rolling out. It's called the Allegro Pulsing Platform. What we found with organizations is that they really want kind of a la carte experience when it comes to surveying. They want to be in charge of using their surveys when they want to, instead of setting up some really kind of predetermined cadences sometimes. So what this tool is really kind of designed to do is to put the power with the organization, say, okay, when do we really want to kind of send out maybe a short pulse survey to understand some opportunity areas and things like that, along with our standard employee engagement surveys that usually fall in like a year-to-year cadence. Really kind of giving the power back to the organization where they can decide, with our consulting support, of course, if we want to survey different parts of the organization, if we're finding opportunities, we can use this tool to really kind of drill down and kind of get some maybe departmental specific results or something like that. So what this tool does for us is that it helps us create more of a relationship with the client too, that they're really looking at us to say, okay, we want this more agile kind of reporting platform, but we also want that support from you and give us guidance about when we should be surveying and what we should be surveying about too. Here are just some quick things about the Allegro Pulse survey itself, right? There's dashboards. Everybody loves a good dashboard. What's the information that we're giving to the client from there? What are the insights that can be generated? So basically, when you're thinking about doing employee research, all of these need to be thought about, right? What is basically the employee experience when they're taking a survey? What is the result experience when people are looking to kind of look at the data? All of this is kind of encompassed in this new Allegro platform dashboard where we can give employees real insight into what's happening with their survey results. So just from a reporting perspective, it really has been kind of a great journey to kind of create something like this and really start to understand what organizations want out of consulting firms like we are. But that's it. That's our journey from my career story through Mercer Sirota itself and to what we're doing moving forward with our products. So I guess now is the time to kind of open the floor to questions, and happy to answer them.
Do we just jump in?
No, what I'm hoping, if you would, is to put your question in the chat. If that's okay with everybody, let's try that, because there's a good number of people on. So ask away, and I thought maybe I could also kick it off, if that's okay, with what kind, we chatted a little bit prior to this about what you look for in consultants, and there's different levels. There's like entry-level consultant, and then there's more of an advanced consultant. If you could talk about the skills of both of those roles, and yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'll cover all that ground, and I'll also answer the question, are we hiring right now? Because I know that'll probably be a popular question in the chat as well. So from a consulting perspective, you start out as a consulting intern, and you move your way up through the consulting ranks as a junior consultant and then to a senior consultant, where I am right now. When we're looking to add consultants, usually we're looking for graduate students to start off in that consulting intern bucket, where we're really kind of teaching them our survey methodology. We're really trying to teach them, the different ways of using tools and things like that. And as they get to know the more of the Mercer Sirota way of doing things, they move up the ranks into the junior consultant spots. Background for those types of roles are consulting intern roles usually are comprised of graduate level students, usually PhD levels. As we get into the consultant and senior consultants, obviously those will be PhDs themselves, and they have certain levels of experience, obviously moving into that senior consultant level, where we may go outside of the organization and look for people that have had experience in the consulting role before. That's not to say that we won't hire master's level students either. We would consider master's level candidates for more senior consultant roles if they've had a number of years of experience working in surveys prior to that. But I think from a master's degree standpoint, what we really try to do is, because master's students usually don't have as much experience working with survey methodology prior to kind of joining an organization or consulting firm like ourselves, we would try to find maybe a project manager type of position available there. So we have project manager interns that usually end up becoming project managers. It's not also unheard of people that have biopsychology backgrounds to move from that project manager role into consulting roles, as well as they kind of complete their PhDs or complete their master's degrees and get the experience needed to become a consultant at certain points. And for right now, prior to COVID, to answer the question about are we hiring, prior to COVID, we were actually looking for project manager interns. But right now, unfortunately, that's on hold. We may be looking for candidates later on in the year. So if we're talking about sending resumes and things like that, I don't think we will be looking at anything till the end of 2020 or even the beginning of 2021 when it comes to hiring.
So maybe these questions have been answered in what you're saying already, but somebody asked about independent contractors, and of course, if you have something for this summer. So I think you answered about the summer.
Yeah.
You're not going ahead yet until things. And then in terms of independent contractors?
Independent contractors, we're not hiring at all. So pretty much there's a hiring freeze across Mercer at the moment, unfortunately.
So then more getting into kind of the role question is, what do you do when a client wants you to deal with a problem but doesn't want to allocate resources to survey data collection?
That's a great question, and it's basically one of the challenges that we mainly seek to answer with clients. So the way that I've personally approached that challenge is to basically help create a roadmap to find the usefulness of the survey data that they originally they already have. So if we're already surveying with a client, that means that we've already been working with them. We've already been helping them generate employee data. What the next step to that is to really create the sense of, all right, this is valuable information for management to have. So when you're trying to tackle that type of challenge, it's really, okay, now that we have this survey data, what does it mean? Make sure that the interpretations are really understood by the stakeholders that you're working with within the organization. And then from there, right, you can take that employee survey data, really equate it to things like performance, right? That's what we're really that's what employee engagement is really geared around is, right? How does employee engagement affect performance? We really need to show that that higher levels of employee engagement and the things that we're working on within the survey itself, such as, talking about, employees' workload. We're talking about managerial effectiveness. We're talking about performance enablement, things like that. How does that really translate over to performance? So when we're really talking with people that really don't trust the survey or employee research program, it comes down to really helping them understand the data and how it affects performance itself.
And just going back for a minute, if someone just graduated with their master's, are they able to apply to internships or when you have them?
Say that again, Elise, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if someone just graduates with their master's and if you had internship openings, would they be able to apply for an internship even though they just graduated?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The internship positions, and this is from my own experience, actually, right? I've had prior work experience and I graduated with my master's degree. And actually, this is actually more relevant. I'm thinking about a client that's a better example of this. They finished their master's degree and they actually became a PM intern, a project manager intern with us after the fact. So we're not specifically looking for students at the moment. We are also looking for graduates as well.
Thank you. And I know, Pete, I just want to acknowledge that you're on and you're unmuted, which is great, who's also a colleague of Michael's and is a principal. And I know there's another part of your job title, which I can't in front of me.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Feel free to chime in at any point.
Actually, there is one question that comes up, and I'm pretty sure Mike doesn't know how to answer this, is how we deal with those who are non-US citizens. Currently, although we have in the past, currently and basically since Trump took office, we haven't really been hiring people that are non-US citizens who need visas, mostly because it costs us an incredible amount of money, and recently not a lot of them have been approved even after all of the work. So under the current administration, unless things change, we probably won't be able to hire someone who doesn't have a work visa. So my apologies for that, but I thought I'd pass that off to you guys.
Good to know. Thank you for that. All right. So next question is, what is the biggest challenge of being an IO consultant? What kind of skills should we build in order to become a consultant?
I think that's a great question, because an IO consultant it's a little different than going down the academic route of things. It's a little different than working internally, right? What we do as consultants is, just from a general perspective, is, we interface with clients a lot. So one of the things that we really need to have sharper skills at is really communication skills, organizational skills. We're really balancing a lot of different projects on a day-to-day basis, right? This meeting itself is one of 6 meetings that I have on my schedule just for today. And that's pretty much a typical day, right? So your organization skills really come into it. Your communication skills, like I said before, translated into not only kind of keeping up with your clients, answering questions along the way, but also communicating out results effectively. when we're talking about us going and visiting clients and delivering executive presentations. So we need to be able to really say, all right, here are your results. This is what we've seen in other organizations. This is what we've seen in your trend data. We really need to be able to kind of explain what we're thinking about the results and help the client understand it. So communication skills are definitely something that needs to be, need to have, I would say, as a consultant. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Pete.
No, I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
All right. So do you do case interviews as part of the application? And if so, is there any difference between your case interviews and those from other companies?
Are we talking specifically about when we're hiring? Is that the question?
I didn't, I don't know. Let's see, who asked that question?
I haven't personally, I've been involved with one hiring so far, or at least in the hiring process of one candidate so far, but I don't remember.
Yes.
Yes.
To say to your question. Thank you.
Pete,
sorry.
maybe you can take that. I don't know if you do that with more senior candidates.
Yeah, what we'll do is the process usually involves being able to visit and meet with several different members. It also depends on, we don't have necessarily a set route because each person that comes into the company comes in through slightly different means. It depends on what part of the country they're coming in or what country they're coming in. And it also depends on their skill level, how we've known them before. But typically we'll do a round of interviews. We'll interview with different levels of the organization and different people through the organization. So I'll meet with them. We'll have project managers meet with them. We'll have consultants meet with them. This way we have a full, well-rounded approach when we're meeting with potential candidates.
Yeah. As an intern, I went through a round of interviews. Actually, it was 5 half-hour interviews back to back, where I was talking with different consultants within the organization. So I guess from a consulting intern aspect, they really want you to just talk with the consultants. And it's really, they're trying to see, your experience working within the types of situations you'd find yourself as a consultant. But I would imagine, like Pete said, if you were talking about more senior level employees, their relationships with people like project managers, since they'll be the ones that are owning the projects right off the bat, they need to know that they have a pretty good working relationship and understanding of the actual process of how we do a survey administration. So from an intern perspective, it was really important for me to just talk to the consultants, and it was conducted.
All right. Are there certain industries that are harder to design surveys for and obtain survey data for any particular reason?
Well, if we look at our norms, and this is, I guess, where Pete's knowledge about our norm database comes in, is that we do see differences across industries in the survey data itself. So I wouldn't consider it harder to gain data about it. I would say that it's harder to have a conversation about the data with the client at what we see. One of the things that comes to the top of my head is that I work with a company in the retail industry, and their results are always lower than what we see across most of our other data. So when I'm talking with clients, with that client in particular, right, we have to be kind of sensitive to our comparisons to the normative data benchmarks and things like that, and just help them realize that, employees within the retail sector just score lower on these types of surveys. But yeah, Pete, I guess you can kind of answer to the other part of that.
Yeah. So the other part of it, in collecting data, the hardest part about collecting data that I come across is typically in manufacturing. These days we prefer doing online surveys. They're cheaper, they're easier, people can access them anyway. We work with a lot of companies that have manual labor where people aren't sitting in front of a computer and there's no technology. Yeah, let's face it, every employee pretty much in every company has an email address, but those who are more of the laborers will typically not use their email addresses. So the email goes into the ether. So That does present as some problems collecting data, but we have a bunch of different ways around it. Usually we'll either collect the data through using tablet devices or using training rooms or giving people the ability to take it on a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
The one complication that comes with that is in certain states, if an employee is expected to answer a survey on their personal device, and it's especially true for California, but I know that there are some other states that have this, we have to pay them, well, not Sirota, excuse me, not Mercer, but the client has to pay the employee for that time and the use of their cell phone. So it does become a little bit more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing that I would say does become a little bit more complicated to get data would be because of GDPR concern and data privacy in Europe. Collecting of personally identifying information has become a little bit more difficult. It's not insurmountable, but I have noticed in Europe especially, we're tending to get a little bit less personal data like gender, age, race, ethnicity, disability status, stuff like that is a little bit harder than we've had previously.
Yeah. That's from the demographic aspect there. Yeah, definitely companies that I've worked with also within the European Union. It's just that they have the option to also tell us to take their data out of our data set at certain times too.
Yeah.
So it really made a complicated situation just a little bit more complicated. However, from my personal perspective, I think it's nice to see that governments are really starting to embrace the fact that personal data is your personal data and giving people a little bit more of a safeguard. So as an IO psychologist with a certain set of ethics, it's nice to see the government are realizing that.
What are some hard skills that consultants should have on their resume?
So hard skill wise, and this is why most of the consultant interns or junior consultants that are hired on are PhD level. So the hard skills, statistical analyses, in-depth knowledge of research methodology, just a lot of just the further education that you get within a PhD program is what we're looking for in the consulting side of things. And that's just short of it. People that have PhD level training are usually more adept at helping a client basically design and administer a more effective survey, just because of the fact that they have that intimate knowledge of not only survey design, but also methodology that goes behind it.
Yeah. I think also, Mike, to your point, I think also keeping up with your knowledge of IO and what's going on in the industry. It surprised me first getting into this field how much things were going to change from year to year. I mean, it just in the last 30 years that I've been doing this, it's incredible the amount of change that's gone on. And also some things have become significantly easier. In the old days, asking people to take a survey, it's like, wait, you want to know who I am on the survey was a really big deal. Now people are like, oh, okay, I'll just check the box. It's really changes, I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but quite significantly over time. So being able to keep up on stuff has become critically important.
And from what Pete said, and going back to what I said earlier about networking, right? PsyOp is a huge opportunity for us to really continue our learning as career practitioners, right? Being engaged with certain industrial organizational related groups like Metro or ATD, things like that, really trying to stay on the cutting edge of what's happening out there because of the ever evolving nature of where we work and what we do. I hear the term VUCA thrown out there all over the place, and that's at the 100% where we are. And that just means that us as practitioners and people that work within the industry, we need to make sure that we're keeping up with what's happening in the volatile space.
Yep.
In terms of the resume then, for their project management position, is there anything else you would add that you would look for on a resume? Because that's more somebody who's, who's more entry level, doing the internship or just graduated.
Yeah. Pete, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. So big one is communication and organizational skills. The skills you need as a good consultant are very similar in many ways to the skills as a good project manager, even though what we're informing the client on differs, right? For a project manager, the skills are fairly regimented. You don't have to think of necessarily interpreting of information. It's basically just relaying information, being able to talk with a client. Whereas in the consultant role, typically we're trying to really interpret and take things to the next level. So the ability to talk to clients is critically important. A number of years ago, we hired someone who was quite talented, in fact, and she didn't like talking to people. And it was a huge problem because this is a consulting position and we talk with people all the time. We don't really have internal positions where you don't have to talk with people. Mm-hmm. And I think eager to learn is very important. Being able to show that you could pick up new technology, could pick up new ways of doing things and really learn from it, understand it, and being able to communicate it to others is really, really strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree with you, Pete, there. I mean, we're working in a very fast-paced environment here. So not only that personal initiative that you need to have to kind of learn more about what you're doing, but also the speed to kind of complete those tasks is also something that's definitely, I would put on the list as a pretty good candidate.
Yep.
Do you use applicant tracking systems for your initial review of resumes?
Yeah, Mike, I don't know if you know this, but yeah, we do through the Mercer system. Typically when we have a new position come up, and in fact, if you guys want, Mercer are recruiting through the Mercer applications will also recruit for us as well. And we typically do it through the online tools. We have a number of recruiters within Mercer that we work with who get the ball rolling for us and make sure that we're crossing all our I's and dotting all our T's. And that we use whether we're hiring in the New York area, in the Chicago area, California, or throughout Europe. We'll use that tool.
So tips for that would be obviously keywords, but I don't know if you could add to tips for that.
Yeah, so one key word or phrasing that we typically will look for is especially SPSS and statistics, really critical. You'll want to put that in. I mean, that goes for us or any other, Mike and I know quite a number of people in the IO world, especially in the survey world. Mm-hmm. And whether they use SPSS or not, having that statistical knowledge is really, really critical. You'll want to put in there things about Excel and, that you're an expert in it, you're moderate. I would also list any survey experiences, making sure you use the word survey if you've actually done a survey. Mm-hmm. You'd want to include those as well.
How do you think COVID-19 will impact traveling for consultants? And do you predict a lot of more virtual work in place of visiting clients on site?
Well, it's stopped travel and it has increased virtual work. I would imagine that at least with the clients that we work with, right? That means that they're really kind of in tune with their employees and they're probably more in tune with their employee safety at the moment. And part of that employee safety is not letting outsiders into the bat cave, basically, right? So I would imagine that as consultants, at least for the immediate future, that we won't be traveling as much as we used to. I know I didn't travel as much as Pete, but prior to that, I would travel at least maybe 5-6 times a year to client sites. Pete was always seemed on a plane somewhere because that's just the nature of his job.
Right.
But moving forward, yes, I think that a lot of our work is going to be done virtually. And one of the things that COVID is showing us is that where we might have gotten together for a face-to-face meeting, it might have been more productive to do it virtually or some other way too. So I think it's all been a really essential learning experience about the effectiveness of us helping our clients. Now, that doesn't, it doesn't mean that, I should be just planning to stay remotely. I need to make sure that my clients would be comfortable with me visiting them if they really wanted to. There has to be another level of kind of concern for your clients and really helping them make a good judgment call about types of things that you might want to do with them when it comes to in terms of like face-to-face meetings and whatnot.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think that my consultant travel will change tremendously in the long term. I think 2 years from now, I'm going to be traveling, a lot again.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is simply because the relationship is so critical to meet with people in person. It's much harder to create a very strong relationship with a client when you're only meeting with them virtually or even through just a video online.
Yeah.
I do think what's going to be a bigger impact of COVID-19 is that there are going to be significantly more employees that are working from home. Mike and I work with quite a number of companies that were really struggling with whether or not they should do a work from home program, or it was very, very limited. And this COVID-19 has caused many companies to pull the trigger on things that they were, kicking down the road for a while. Hey, should we do this? And they had to. So quite a number of companies that I'm working with who never had work from home programs are now A, having work from home programs, and B, recognizing that they can still be very productive.
Yes.
Having the 1980s, 1990s mentality that if you're not in the office, you're not working, needs to go away for a lot of those executives. And they're in a learning curve right now. They're figuring out that can happen.
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what Pete's saying too, I mean, I think this is a fantastic time to kind of sharpen your skills from a virtual perspective, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
Learning how to present remotely, virtually, things like that. It's all you're going to be doing for the next few months, if not next year.
Yeah.
So now is the time to really sharpen those skills too.
All right, I'm going to ask one last question and then ask people just to stay on after that so I could let them know other information sessions that are coming up. So the last question I'm going to ask here is, do you recommend getting involved in any side projects that include use of survey tools and systems if you don't touch upon them in your current role?
Absolutely. 100%, yes. One of the things that I've tried to do is to at least stay in contact with students that were in my graduate programs, things like that, create conversations around things that I'm not doing, try to learn things about what they're doing, and really try to add to my knowledge base about things that Mercer Sirota doesn't do. That's really kind of part of that whole continual learning kind of attitude you need to have for this type of a role. Now, outside projects, yeah, definitely research, PSYOP posters, publishing, things like that. As a PhD, or hopefully soon to be PhD, right? That's one of the things that I need to continue in my young career, is to really kind of pump out the research to go along with the practitioner experience that I have. I think the two of them are really go kind of hand in hand. It also makes it easier for when I'm trying to talk with the client or make a sale or something like that. One of the major questions that a client has is, okay, yeah, you have this fantastic tool and you're going to be our consultant. What knowledge do you bring to the table, right? You can say something along, well, I've worked with these companies. I've published these number of papers. My research is mainly interested in X, Y, Z. Just helping them helping them to understand that you are an expert in your field and that you are actively trying to increase your knowledge base.
Yeah, well, the only thing I would add to that, and agreeing 100% with Mike, is the typical question on an interview is, have you ever? Not how many times have you done something. So the more experiences you get, the better consultant you are. What works for me when I work with clients, I'll get people asking me questions. It's like, oh yeah, I used to work in telecom, or I used to work at a hospital, and I'm like, oh wow, it adds value to the relationship. Plus, it also helps you if you try out different things. It's like, I don't like doing that, so if I have a job that tells me I got to do that, it makes a big difference when you're interviewing for a job. People are saying you're going to have to do something that you're not sure about. You're basically saying, yeah, it sounds like it'd be interesting, but being able to say, no, I definitely don't like that is really, really critical.
Yeah. Those are kind of the two approaches that I've seen with at least my graduate cohort, is they either have gone into a specific role where they've gained a lot of knowledge about something, and then over time they've kind of increased their exposure to other types of things. So say, for example, they started off just working with 360 tools and became a pretty experienced coach in giving feedback sessions. Then they expand their knowledge on other tools and whatnot as their careers progress within that specific company. The way that I went about it was that I wanted to start with consulting, or at least try to start with consulting first, right? And I want a large amount of experience with a lot of different things, and that's where Mercer Sirota really kind of is helping me with my career development. Is that I don't just work with engagement surveys. I work with 360 tools. I work with M&A surveys and a bunch of different content areas. So yeah, I mean, there's a couple different approaches to that, but yeah, you should always be probably looking to actively broaden your horizon when it comes to the field of IO psychology.
Well, I thank you so much. First, I just want to thank Michael and Peter so much for their time and also all the information that you generously gave. There's networking opportunities with Michael on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
And networking is definitely really key right now. That's what everybody is talking about. And so please do that through professional organizations, people in the field. Tomorrow we have Elliot Scott Staffing, who's at noon, and Northwell, who does some great employee engagement stuff tomorrow evening. And then next week is the last one of our information series is with PepsiCo. So check with whoever you found out about this one about, check with them for that information. So again, I just want to give a big thanks to Michael and Peter, and thank everybody for, all your great questions, and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. Great to talk to you. Have a great day.
Have a great day.